Stop it. Don't pretend to be sick and get in my way. You're just a housewife.
My husband, Matt, shook off my hand as I staggered, unwell, and stormed out of the house. I had always believed that marriage was about supporting each other in sickness and in health, but Matt left me behind. The word despair raced through my mind as my consciousness slowly faded away. The person who extended a helping hand to me at that moment was someone I never expected. My name is Michelle. I'm 32 years old. I married my husband, who is the same age, about a year ago, and we've been living a normal life. Since we met through work, he was supportive when I said I wanted to continue working after our marriage. We both worked, so we shared household chores. However, my husband was not very good at housework, so I eventually asked him to do only the simple things. My husband had been actively helping with household chores without showing any displeasure, so I had no complaints about our married life. Then one day, after experiencing some minor health issues, I visited the doctor and was told,
"Congratulations, you are just about 7 weeks along."
To my surprise, I found out I was pregnant. That day, my husband and I shared our joy together.
"I'm going to be a dad. It's kind of hard to believe."
It's like that at first. You'll start to feel it gradually. We talked like this, looking forward to what the future would bring. I thought a happy future was surely waiting for us, but contrary to my hopes, reality took a different turn.
"Hey, what about dinner? It's your turn, isn't it? And you haven't cleaned the bathroom either."
I'm sorry, I felt so ill today that I couldn't do anything. I was in a state where breathing was all I could manage due to severe morning sickness. Feeling nauseous all the time and barely able to stand, I spent my days lying in bed. Unable to go to work, I kept missing days. My husband didn't try to understand my suffering and was unforgiving.
"Slacking off from work and household chores, huh?"
From my husband's perspective, I seemed like a major slacker, and he started showing his displeasure more openly with exaggerated sighs.
"Hey, don't get spoiled just because you're pregnant. You expect me to do household chores too, even though I work outside? Can you even be a mother like that?"
I sometimes wondered how he could say such things, but to my husband, who came home stressed from work, a wife who couldn't even do household chores must have been an annoyance. I thought about going back to my parents' house until my health improved, but I feared it would create an irreversible distance between us. Morning sickness is temporary. It should subside in another 2 months, so I decided to endure until then. But my husband's scornful attitude only escalated. Later, while the morning sickness eventually subsided, my ill health continued. With repeated hospital admissions, I decided to take a break from work. I couldn't risk anything happening to the baby by overexerting myself during pregnancy. Despite having thoroughly discussed this with my doctor and employer, my husband complained bitterly.
"Stop relying on me for everything. It's your responsibility if you can't work or do household chores."
He may have been right, but my decisions were all to protect our unborn child. Why do I have to be spoken to like that? Enduring my husband's unreasonable behavior, I tried asking, "About the living expenses, my sick pay is quite low. Could you contribute a bit more from your salary?" But he was completely unresponsive.
"Why should I have to pay for you too?"
I started to wonder if I could really continue with this man. My growing anxiety was snowballing. I had thought that becoming pregnant would lead everything in a positive direction, but somehow everything went awry. The last straw was my mother-in-law, Mary. "Michelle, how are you feeling?" One day, Mary called me. She divorced when my husband was in elementary school and raised him on her own. She's an active yet gentle person who's always been kind to me, but she said, "It's better to move around a bit during pregnancy. It must be hard for Matt to do household chores while working, so you need to do your part." Hearing this from Mary, I felt completely overwhelmed. Mary isn't a bad person. She's experienced in childbirth, and I understand her point of view. But at that moment, all I could hear was, "Don't be lazy, do all the housework." "If you're not working, all the more reason." Yes, you're right. I had thought of confiding in Mary about my husband's unfairness, but feeling completely isolated by her lack of understanding, I gave up. "Let me know if you need help." Mary said this and hung up, but I was left feeling unresolved. And then, the incident happened. I woke up feeling feverish that morning. Overwhelmed by a general malaise and intermittent nausea. Staggering around, I somehow managed to prepare breakfast for my husband. As I lay on the couch, he looked at me with contempt and said,
"You don't need to make a show of how hard it is."
After my husband left for work, I lay in bed, but my health continued to deteriorate, and it didn't seem like I'd be able to make dinner. Should I order delivery? No, our finances are tight. The living expenses I received from my husband were never enough, and I had been dipping into my savings every month. Moreover, the medical expenses for my upcoming delivery were significant, and I feared we'd run out of money before the baby arrived. I called my husband. "I'm really not feeling well today. I'm sorry, but I can't make dinner. Could you pick something up?"
What? What are you talking about? You're just a housewife.
"But I really can't move, so..."
I'm too busy for this. If it's shopping, you should do it. Don't make your husband do such things.
He abruptly hung up, and I quietly cried. After a while, I heard the door open in a rush. My husband had returned. "Hey, Matt, what about dinner?"
I'm going out for drinks. I'll eat out. Don't need it.
At that moment, I was feeling feverish and could barely stand. "I'm really struggling today. I wish you could stay with me," I pleaded. But he shook off my hand, saying,
Stop it. Don't get in my way. You're just a housewife. You're probably just faking it as usual.
He left the house after saying that. I didn't have the energy to go back to bed and collapsed at the entrance. "Someone, please help me." I desperately appealed in my mind, but there was no response in the empty house. Then, from afar, I heard a familiar voice. A familiar voice was calling me in my foggy consciousness. "Stay with me." Who is this person? My consciousness faded at that point. When I woke up, Mary was looking at me with concern, and I was in a hospital bed. "Michelle, oh good, you're awake." Apparently, Mary had found me collapsed at home and called an ambulance. "Don't worry, the baby is fine. I'll call the doctor." Mary quickly left the room, wiping her tears. The doctor said I had severe anemia and a seasonal cold, which could have been dangerous for the baby. I had felt feverish, but I was surprised to learn I had a high fever when I was brought to the hospital. "But why, Mary?" "Matt asked me to come and scold you for slacking off in household chores." Mary had come to our house after hearing constant complaints from my husband, and found me collapsed at the entrance. "I'm sorry. I was harsh without listening to you." There was another reason for Mary's visit. "I wanted to thank you for this. That red cardigan looks great on you." Last week was Mary's birthday. Since getting married, I've always sent her gifts on Mother's Day and her birthday, feeling the cold more with age. So I chose a cardigan this year. A bit flashy, but with a simple design to keep her feeling youthful. "I remembered every word you said, and thank you for sending such a lovely gift. I was wondering if you really were as lazy as my son claimed. I'm so sorry for what happened." Mary apologized, crying. "It's okay. I wanted to talk to you about my husband, but it was hard to say." I cried in front of Mary, too. Having her on my side lightened my heart. After we cried for a while, Mary said with burning anger, "That man, my own son, is unforgivable. To let his pregnant wife suffer like this." Her lips trembled with anger, and she clenched her handkerchief tightly. "Michelle, what will you do about your relationship with him?" When I honestly shared my thoughts, Mary nodded in agreement. "I'm on your side, always beside you." Emboldened by Mary's supportive words, I made up my mind to take action. After a week in the hospital, I was discharged with Mary accompanying me. My husband hadn't contacted me even once during my stay. At this point, I didn't care anymore. Upon arriving home, I was hit by an appalling stench, despite having been gone for only 4 days. "What is this smell? It's like living with a wild animal." Mary's comment almost made me laugh, but I held it in. The odor was indeed unbearable. My husband was sprawled on the living room couch, snoring with drool dripping from his mouth. "Wake up, you foolish son!" Startled by Mary's echoing voice, my husband instantly woke up, looking pathetic.
What, Mom? You? What have you been doing? Leaving the house for days?
He began complaining to me, but Mary shouted back at him.
Michelle was in the hospital. What is this mess? Even a zoo would be cleaner.
Mary was right. In just a week, our home had turned into a garbage dump. The sink was filled with empty beer bottles and food scraps. Damp towels and underwear were scattered everywhere, and the floor was sticky as if something had been spilled. It's worse than a zoo. What kind of life have you been living? I muttered, and my husband glared at me.
Don't act so high and mighty. It's all because you...
I doubt even a baby would make such a mess. You really can't do anything on your own, can you? I expressed my opinion calmly. After all, it was the truth. Thinking about it, I realized I had been managing cleaning and laundry quite well. When I was at home, it never looked like a cage in a zoo. I never imagined my husband would be such a life-inept chimp.
Why did you leave Michelle and go out?
Mary's overwhelming presence completely subdued my husband. No matter the age, men are always weak against their mothers, I thought.
It's not like that. She was just being childish, saying not to go drinking. Are you saying Michelle, with her high fever and pale face, was faking it? Are you out of your mind?
Even the usually calm Mary was scolding him loudly. My husband just glared at me silently. How dare you tell on me? I could almost hear his inner voice accusing me of tattling. Then he muttered resentfully,
Don't get cocky. I've been supporting you all this time.
In the past, I might have been intimidated by such words from him, but not anymore. I'm no longer that weak. Fine, then I don't need your support anymore. I'm prepared for that.
What?
I'm saying I don't need you anymore. What wife would want to be with a grown baby who can't do anything for himself? I had run out of patience with my husband. His verbal abuse was one thing. Unacceptable, but perhaps something we could have worked through with discussion. However, he left me with a high fever and went for a drink. And while his wife is in the hospital, he turns his house into a garbage mansion and is unable to live a normal life as an adult. He was failing as both a husband and a father. And what really were you doing? Suddenly going out drinking with colleagues? I asked, glaring at him. Then my husband flinched in an amusing way.
That's none of your business. No, it is my business. I am your mother. I have the right to know. Tell me the truth.
Mary demanded firmly, and my husband started trembling, panicking. If you won't confess, should I show you the undeniable evidence?
Evidence? You mean?
His face turned pale at that moment.
Yes, confess now. You're making it worse for yourself.
Under our relentless questioning, he finally hung his head and admitted,
I'm sorry.
In short, he had been having an affair with a female coworker since I became pregnant, and household chores and his care became difficult. A cliched story found anywhere.
What's her name? Which department? How often did you meet each week?
Mary and I bombarded my husband with questions. I stopped the recording mode on my mobile phone. All right, confession evidence collected. Thanks for speaking up so honestly. As I smiled, my husband's face hardened again.
You tricked me.
Yes, who would have thought you were actually cheating? Thanks to you, we didn't have to hire a detective. Much appreciated.
You deceived me.
My husband, filled with frustration, started blaming me for his infidelity. His logic was incomprehensible.
You were just pretending to be sick to get my sympathy, weren't you? It's mutual.
Not even close. Watching my husband refuse to admit his faults made me feel even more pitiful. Then Mary sighed deeply and murmured,
Selfish, tyrannical, always making excuses. You're just like your father, whom I divorced. You know that? Dad?
My husband was shocked by Mary's unexpected words. That's true. He had always hated his father, who divorced Mary when he was in elementary school. His father was notoriously unruly and often caused trouble when drunk. My husband never imagined he'd be compared to him.
I never got drunk and caused a scene.
Mary was referring to something else.
Your father also left me alone during my pregnancy to go drinking, remember? Men end up like their fathers. I should have divorced before you were old enough to remember.
Mary spoke with a mixture of disdain and sadness. My husband was speechless, frozen in shock.
A father who negatively influences his children is better off gone. Don't you think, Michelle?
Yes, not necessary, in fact, should be excluded. After hearing Mary's perfectly valid reason for divorce, my husband, left speechless, was handed the divorce papers by me. But he still clung on to us.
Let's rethink this. We're having a child. Cool down, okay?
His pleading tone was like a child begging his mother. What are you talking about? That stage has long passed.
So what should I do now?
As he covered his face in distress, peeking through his fingers. He still had some fight left. Mary delivered the final blow.
Stop it. If you continue to cling to Michelle, I'll cut off your relationship as mother and son. What will you do? Why won't you take my side, Mom?
He seemed defeated. Mary remained my ally till the end. Eventually, I divorced my husband in my 7th month of pregnancy. I never expected our relationship to deteriorate with the arrival of our child, but perhaps it was meant to be. Afterward, I returned to my parents' house and gave birth to a healthy boy. My parents were shocked, as they knew nothing until I returned home with a pregnant belly. A lawyer introduced by my father handled the divorce negotiations, and we secured compensation for the mental and financial distress I endured. I also made sure the woman involved paid her share. Post-divorce, my ex-husband repeatedly visited my parents' house, begging to see the child.
When are you going to transfer the child support? I'd retort sarcastically. We don't need that. We're family. Best one together, he'd reply nonsensically.
What nonsense.
Just fulfill your minimum duty as a father. Even if you were a 0 as a husband. Otherwise, you're less than 0 in everything.
My husband left with a look of being struck on the head, seemingly depressed. The image of his father must have left a strong impression on him. Rumor has it that he resigned from his company. He ranted to his coworkers about our divorce, insisting it wasn't his fault. But it backfired. Whether he genuinely believed he was blameless or not, his recounting of all the verbal and physical abuse he hurled at me led everyone to despise him. Simultaneously, rumors of his affair with a female colleague spread. His despicable behavior garnered no sympathy from anyone, leading to his isolation at work and eventual resignation. He might be delusional enough to think he can reconcile with me, but of course I have no such intentions.
Michelle, you're returning to work soon, right? How's your health?
Yes, much better now. I need to work for this little one.
That's a dependable mom for you.
Unbeknownst to my ex-husband, I sometimes meet Mary with my child. She initially hesitated, saying,
We're strangers now after the divorce, so I'll keep my distance.
But when I told her, You're a lifesaver for me and my child, she happily held my son. Please teach me the ropes as a fellow single mother.
Leave it to me. Let's work together as comrades, or like detectives who've brought down a villain.
Somehow Mary and I have become more like best friends than in-laws. It's not a bad relationship at all, but sometimes I worry.
You're just like your father.
Mary's words linger in my mind. Will my child become like his father one day? Do I believe that blood cannot be denied? It's pointless to think about it now. It's decades into the future. But I resolve to teach him that wrong is wrong, and to impart the importance of kindness and empathy to everyone. My son is just my son, nothing more, nothing less. As a mother, my only role is to devote my life to raising him. The winter sun, gently piercing the cold sky, seemed to be cheering me on.